question is to evaluate the topic selection. In our campaign, we choose predictive analytics for social media campaigns because it is important and very relevant today. Predictive analytics is growing fast, and many stores that AI, machine learning, and big data to improve their marketing. These tools help business to improve their businesses and move from just looking at the past result to actual predicting future engagement, choosing the best time to pause and improve their return on investment. However, many companies still struggling with the practical issues like lack of data skills, difficulty to connecting different platforms, and concern about privacy and regulations. This means research in this area can help businesses right away. Also, the existing studies show some clear gaps, such as the need for better explanation of the how prediction works, stronger ethical guidelines, and long-term evidence. Because this topic combines new technology with real business need, it is the right time to study it and develop methods and the in different situation. Thank you. Over to Iona.
Thank you, Jani. I am Lenage AS BM22571816. So, when we comes to evaluate the quality, credibility, and relevance of the research papers that we selected and why we selected those papers over others and what criteria that we use to judge their suitability. So, we selected papers that together balance empirical evidence, methodological variety, and practical relevance. So our criteria were peer-reviewed or reputable sources, clear methodology, and direct relevance to social media prediction tasks. The chosen work include empirical modeling studies using decision trees, random forest, and neutral networks. So systematic reviews that synthesis big data findings and apply case studies showing ROI improvement. So these papers were chosen because they demonstrate both technical performance and business impact. For example, studies that report better targeting and increased ROI after analytics interventions, while reviews highlights broader trends and limitations. So, we preferred papers with transparent method and measurable outcomes over opinion pieces. And we included review articles to map out the field. At the same time, we flagged weaker sources or industry blogs when they lacked rigorous method over the city, but the review also shows common weakness like limited generalizability and ethical operationalization, which we note in our analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Anodya. I will be explaining about the evaluation of research methodologies in the literature part in our. So we use different methods of different strengths. Quantitative machine learning approach such as decision trees, random forest, and neutral networks are the most effective and accurate short-term prediction of our behavior because they had large histogenesis and dataset often improve targeting and conversion in practices and systematic reviews and the bibliometric studies effective for the mapping and field identify the gaps. These mixed methods design that combine predictive model with the quantitative interviews or stakeholder validations are practically convincing because they both measure performance and test real world fit. However, purely conceptual or short explanation studies without external validation are less convenient. because they lack generalizability, and likewise machine learning studies suffer from the practical poor data quality, lack of cross-platform integration, the black box explainability problem, and weak attention to the ethics privacy. These limitations reduce the reality world explanation problems, and therefore the most reliable approach is a blend. We identified that stakeholder validations and the long-living test and the measure long-term effect. This literature calls for the XAI and more longitudinal design, the stronger ethical framework to make findings trustworthy and actionable. Thank you. Hand over to Dinitma.
Thank you, Divyani. Now I'll discuss the assessment of gaps identified in the literature. So in our literature review, we identify several meaningful gaps, and we believe these gaps are both actionable and valuable for future research. For example, many studies highlight problems such as poor data quality, limited cross-platform integration, lack of real-world testing, and very weak attention to ethics and privacy. So these are not minor gaps, they directly affect whether predictive analytics can actually be used by companies. Another important gap is the lack of explainable AI in social media prediction models. Several studies show that black box models may be accurate, but businesses hesitate to trust them because they cannot interpret the predictions. This is a significant and timely research opportunity. So we also noticed that most studies focus on short-term prediction, but rarely examine long-term or repeated campaigns. So meaning there is a little understanding of how models perform over time. This makes longitudinal research another strong future direction. So overall, the gaps we identify are meaningful because they reflect real issues faced in industry, and these gaps could definitely lead to valuable academic and practical research, especially around explainability, ethics, data integration, and long-term predictive performance. Thank you, and over to you, Dinirma.
Thank you, Kaudi. I'm Vadugi DV, BM22558350. So our fifth question is to evaluate our own system synthesis process. So we believe our synthesis was strong because we didn't just summarize papers, we connected patterns across them. So, for example, we linked how machine learning models consistently achieve good predictive accuracy, but at the same time, we highlighted that practical barriers like data quality, privacy concerns, and explainability reduce their real-world usefulness. This integration of technical finding with business challenges is key strength in our discussion. Another strong point is that we connected different types of studies, empirical models, systematic reviews, and case studies how the full picture to show the full picture. Also, we compared where studies agree and disagree, especially regarding ethics and model transparency. And one area we couldn't improve is including more could improve is including more deserved goals case studies. Many of our sources focus on Western or large market context, and our synthesis could have been stronger if we compared those findings with research from developing countries or smaller market. This would make our discussion more balanced and acceptable for regions like Sri Lanka. But overall, our synthesis is effective because it clearly brings together theories, findings, and practical gaps in logical and critical way. And next, our sixth question is to conclude the purpose and recommendations for future research directions. In our conclusion, we proposed several recommendations such as integrating explainable, improving data ethics frameworks, and encouraging longitudinal technique testing for predictive models. Recommendations are feasible and impactful because they respond directly to the weaknesses identified in literature. For example, explainable AI is becoming essential in marketing analytics, and many papers in our review mention that trust issue with black box model. Introducing AI is realistic because many frameworks already exist but have not yet been applied effectively in social media marketing. So this is practical and achievable direction. Also, we recommend better data governance and privacy practices. This is well supported because ethical concerns and compliance issues, especially with growing global regulations. Finally, we suggest long-term and cross-platform research because the literature clearly show a lack of these studies. Use academics to test models, stability and accuracy over time. Overall, our proposed directions are the best next steps because they address and most critical limitations found in literature, and they would produce research that is both academically and practically useful for business. Thank you.